We are back again talking to Ron Kloet of Wyoming, Michigan. This is our third installment and quite possibly the last. We have made it as far as his fourth tour in Vietnam, which was between September 71 and September 72. And he was, his original assignment was with the Phoenix program there. Now, let's begin here by just reviewing it a little bit briefly. What was the purpose of your original assignment? When they send you there in September of 71, what are you supposed to do?
Well, I went to school. I took a course prior to coming to, after I finished my course for company officer course, the captain's course. Mm-hmm. Rather than going back to Fort Bragg for a reassignment, which apparently it looked like I was going there for PCS, I decided I'm not going to do that. I didn't like, it's not a very gratifying job as long as there's a war going on.
And you had covered that in the previous session, so we've kind of got that part.
Okay, so I decided I'm going to go into the program. I could get volunteered to get into Phoenix, which at that time, because of Vietnamization, had been changed to Phong Nguyen, which is the Vietnamese word for Phoenix program. And I went to the institute, down at Fort Bragg where Special Forces are, and they have and took what is called Military Assistance Advisor course, and studied how to work in a combined center with the Phoenix or Phong Nguyen program. In other words, the Phong Nguyen program is targeted against the infrastructure. These are people who ostensibly are legal civilians, but yet are working for the Viet Cong. So they teach you how to work with the counterparts, how to develop dossiers and documentation, and how to acquire that stuff, and then translate it into, then how to execute plans to neutralize Viet Cong infrastructure. And they also, while I was there, of course, I had been there 3 years before, they sent me to a Vietnamese language course, which I never had before. And that was every morning for the duration of that course. They had one-on-one, basically. They had a few people and then one instructor, and we went through each chapter of the vocabulary book and practiced a language, Vietnamese, which was was strictly adapted to this working environment. In other words, the committee, the terminology used in the committee for titles and for the enemy and all this, and like dossier ha cho, that's Vietnamese for dossier. So that was what it was, very directed. When I got out of the course, after leave, I went to Vietnam, and I entered in Saigon, and I went to another Orient course by MACV Cords, which now is the civilian side of Military Assistance Command Vietnam, where all the Phoenix program falls under. And they give us an orientation on reporting things and what we're supposed to do. And one of the reports was called Big Mac. And I, having been in it, this was a report that dates back several years, which I first, had not the specific name, but back when they started the whole program with with American people, officers primarily, getting involved in this, back in the 60s, back in 66. It's called ISEX there. Don't ask me what ISEX means, but that's what it was called. That was the program, and they also the reporting. Well, they taught you at this course the Big Mac report, and they give you a book, and they give you books on showing the infrastructure and where they're found, at what levels, and then I took all this stuff with me out to my job. Well, I got to, I went from Saigon to Binh Duong province. That's where I was going to, where the 3 Corps, I guess you call it, the province Three Corps area, that area of Three Corps, 3rd Military Region, where the went through another orientation for the area, and then we split. Whoever was going to this province went there, and then we all went up there. Well, I originally came in to Phuc Long, which was the province where there was. I was assigned to a district which was located in the southwest corner of the province, or southeast, I'm sorry, close to the Long Con province, and then close to the next Corps area. In other words, on the edge of the 2nd Corps. And I was being trained to take over from a man named John Rowe, R-O-W-E, who, by the way, is from Western Michigan originally, Holland or Zealand, one of the two, Hollander anyway. And he was a big guy. And I stayed there a week or so. I just got orientation. And then this is the beginning of this, what do you call it, the turn down, when we're getting ready we're going out of Vietnam, basically.
Yeah. Well, by late 71, a lot of American troops were gone already.
Oh, the American troops were gone, yeah. By the time I got up into Phuc Long, there was no cavalry division, brigade. There was a brigade headquarters right next to the district, which is close to the province capital. That was empty. There was nothing there. And so they were consolidating manpower on our organization, and the MACV team, which I was assigned to. And so I moved up to Phuc, or Song Bay, we used to call it, the headquarters, the province capital. And I can't even remember the man a major whose place I was going to take. This is the first tour in Vietnam where I had the chance to spend more than a day with the man I was supposed to replace, and I could learn the ins and outs and get some feedback on how things were going, so I could start out depressed as opposed to finding out later, that things aren't going very well. Well, I started out that I took over, and the first thing I found out, there's nothing going on. And I'd sit in there, and we do the processing of data coming in from documents from outside, and documents perhaps captured, which were very few. White chans, ralliers that may give information and mix consolidated, put in file, you know how they go. But I knew that I had an interpreter. His name was Khan, K-H-A-N-H, who helped me with my counterpart, because he spoke some English, but when you get into technical things, he was not very good. So his name was Chan, C-H-A-N-H. He was a Chinese, Vietnamese person, very honest, straightforward, and not liked by ethnic, pure Vietnamese, because they don't trust people like that, which is one of the things you'll find in that country. Mixed blood was taboo. And Khan was, which really, I didn't question at first, because I didn't know the lay of the land, politically speaking, was the son-in-law of the province chief, who was he was a Chinese Vietnamese mix, full colonel, Lu Yem, I can't remember his first name, but Y-E-M. And his like I said, was his son-in-law. Well, nothing was really happening, and in fact, Chan, my counterpart, captain, from this special police, the equivalent, I'd say the only equivalency was FBI.
Yeah.
So he said, "You'll never get anything done in this. The sector, that's the military headquarters, that's the people who control the province for the province chief. Of course, it's all a military. It's actually Vietnam was a military dictatorship,
right?
Not with a velvet glove, perhaps, but still a dictatorship. And so he said, you'll never get any operations going because they'll be compromised, and normally they won't allow it. So the only thing I did was, of course I had this report I had to do. I had security responsibilities I ended up getting security responsibilities for the team because the military advisor, the military intelligence advisor, he's gone, so I was doing intelligence, straight intelligence, and then I had a specialist, E7 I think it was. They had specialist grades, which they did away with soon after, that took care of all the documentation and security stuff.
Now, we had covered a certain amount of the frustration of the assignment last time. But for the first half of that assignment, you were not doing much.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. How large is your team, and are they all in one place? Or are they
well, we got pared down. And we had been, when I first came, our living quarters and the like were for the military and that, were in underground bunkers in the northern, I call it, the north part of our compound. The directions are hard to think about, but to me it was that way anyway. And they were underground, very, very secure, because several years before the enemy, I think in the Tet of '68, they had attacked the province capital and destroyed everything, and so our American engineers came in and built all these, and they were good, safe, dry, no snakes, or millipedes, which are big, and which I found out in that previous that district team house. He had bottles of these things on his office because they come at night and they were on the rafters and they'd fall on you, so you slept in the mosquito netting. Up there, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have mosquitoes, but in the bunker, it was really nice. Well, they were consolidating, and during that time, we consolidated and moved into the down to 15 people. I don't know the total strength before then, but it was depreciating, and I moved in with the police advisor, state police, Vietnamese police. Mm-hmm. This was a retired New York Police Department lieutenant who apparently never had been shot at before for some reason, but that's another thing. So I moved in with him, and I work on a committee daily doing going through the drills, okay? And it was boring because, I'd gone to school and all this, and I'd like to see something go. And
now, when you were in school, did they warn you of the possibility that there could be issues with either corruption or people playing both sides?
Oh yeah. That was well, Americans are naive in many ways. They don't think they believe everybody has to be honest, but yet there's a term in Arabic called bakshish. This term is universal in the third world. Nothing gets done unless the skids get greased. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of that going on. I mentioned, I told you in my second tour about the rice snafu, where the province chief wanted to sell the rice back to the poor Montagnards, which the Viet Cong had taken from them. When the Americans captured it, mm-hmm. They issued up, and the province chief was all bent out of shape over that issue. Well, I had, I'm doing my job, and we moved down in there. The S2 advisor had departed. I can't think of a specific time frame now. That's one thing I didn't keep a diary in that job. I wish I had. I'd have all. And the one I had, I told you about that. They took it away from me. But anyway, I took that job. Mm-hmm. So I was doing two jobs.
Right.
Of course, we're Montagnards. There's nothing. There was very little going on. Montagnards are primitive people. Most of them are anti-Vietnamese as opposed to anti-communist. They don't want anything to do with them because they've been treated like dirt for centuries. So we did the things that were necessary. There were some incidents take place, like for example, there was a contact by the PRU, which was by that time no longer Special Forces led, but by a Vietnamese lieutenant who, as I told you, got captured eventually. Anyway, he had a contact made out, got a contact to the east of, I call it east of the province capital, and I had to go out with my interpreter. I had a flak vest and all that stuff on. And I didn't go with Con, because Con, he wouldn't go out and get shot at, but I gained a Vietnamese a corporal when the American advisor departed, and I got him too. So I had 2 interpreters. And so I went out there, and I had to basically take head count and picture these dead people. And they wouldn't get paid, the PRU, Province Recon Unit, as it's called, unless we could verify they were actually Viet Cong and dead. So I did that, and then I had an incident. There was an incident down in the Dai Quai area, which was another province, another district headquarters, where they killed 5 Viet Cong and Camolezan types, we feel, but I had to fly down there. Wasn't able to get a helicopter at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and these people had been laying out in the hot sun in a pile from sunup, so they really were ripe, which is very nauseating. But anyway, so I had to take pictures of that too to verify this. That's some of the thing I did. The frustration of not being able to get anything done, I ended up firing my interpreter with the Phoenix because I felt he was a snitch. I mean, everything that went on was getting briefed to his dad, his father-in-law, and of course, if it was anything that dealt with possibly that something he wouldn't know about, it isn't going to be allowed. Sector, the military guy down there, it wouldn't go.
Now, as far as you can tell me, was the province chief basically in cahoots with the Viet Cong?
We don't think. No, he was playing both sides against the middle. The level of his complicity. See, it's a border area. See, there's politics in this. Viet Cong are a political organization too. They're close to Cambodia. They're far away from Saigon, but yet there is a strong group of North Vietnamese and Viet Cong that live in the areas in Cambodia, in the Laos-Cambodian border area, and so he was concerned, about himself, and yet, the government didn't want to relieve him or get rid of him. They weren't the government. That's the case. It was a military dictatorship. He kept people in line in the province. Now his politics, I don't know, but none of the Vietnamese I talked to liked him, and they didn't trust him. But he was in charge, so that's the way things go. When I got rid of him, kicked Khan, his brother, his son-in-law, basically just, it was finished. Nothing was getting done. Nothing got done until the 1st of April, approximately, of '72, when the North Vietnamese East Offensive commenced. And then, when they attacked the next province over, and of course they attacked throughout the country, and they were cutting the highway between Saigon and us, no food's coming in. The Vietnamese province chief's office and his people in the sector, all of a sudden are in the police chief, are arresting people for possible Viet Cong or NVA, whatever connections, and throwing them in jail. Now they had a collection, chicken coops. They look like just like chicken coops. They're no more than that high, all made out of a wooden frame with wire, barbed wire around it. And if they could put you in there, you were, I mean, no one knew what the legal process was. And they'd just say, VC, okay, fine. I got a call from down in the province, the district, or the province, the Pacification Security Group representative for that area of 3 Corps. I don't know if it's all the 3 Corps. I never knew. It was down in Ben Dung City, or I can't remember the name of it now. Don't have my map, but anyway, he had an office down south, and how come they did it? What authority did they arrest these people without for anything? What's the authority they're using? Well, I talked to my counterpart, and I said, I getting questions from my higher up, because CIA was technically pacification security, technically operationally over me, though I'm assigned to the team there. And I talked to Chan. He says, "Oh yeah," and he showed me this document. I says, "Can I have one?" "Oh yeah." Well, it was a document signed back several years earlier, back in 10 or 68 or whatever. You can arrest anybody you want. It was, of course, secret.
Right.
But the point of that was, the deal is, the Americans had this because some American units, somebody knew them, yet they, because of this rotational policy, no institutional memory, nobody knew what was in the file cabinets.
So, in terms of what was going on in your own area, so basically the province chief or whatever, he had been basically not making trouble.
Not making trouble.
So he wasn't necessarily sort of betraying a lot to the North Vietnamese Viet Cong, but rather he just didn't want to stir up trouble because then they might react and make
They
more
might
trouble
react
for him.
because he was vulnerable.
So, but he sort of had his lists of usual suspects, and then could go out and all arrest them once things got
hot,
difficult. Yeah.
And that's what he did. That's my opinion.
Did you have anything to do with actually trying to interrogate those people?
No.
Or was that all done by somebody else?
That was done by them. And I don't know how it was done. Technically, they never brought us into the scene.
Right.
I know there was a fire support base along the highway, up the highway QL19, I believe, from Ben Dong Xuai, that went up and hooked onto the road that goes up. But halfway in between, there was a fire support base, an artillery position, and they all of a sudden they arrest the captain down there and bring him up, and I never knew where he went. That they never informed us of this. Well, fine, that's their country, and they arrested other people. They just put them in those cages, and the province chief of police never told us anything what they did. He would never inform us. They just did it because they figured these were VC or had relatives who were in the programs or whatever. They were playing safe. Like I said, I really feel happy some way to have this offensive come, because I finally was doing some real work in the sense that trying to find out what's going to happen in our area, because what happened the night this happened, when they attacked us. Oh well, before that they cut these roads, and we were cut off, For example, I was able to get that B-52 strike up there in the north and got good results. I was getting information reports from Army 525 MI Group, 3rd Battalion, which was represented that 3rd region, on all this fictitious reports of enemy units, whatever, and caches here and caches there. So, I knew that this, but from my experience, the first tour, most of this is Bravo Sierra, and I wasn't going to pay attention. I have no way to substantiate it.
So you were getting a lot of reports, and were these from Americans?
Yeah, American running Vietnamese sources.
Okay.
They have no. How do they vet these people? Can they put them on polygraphs? Have they any way to check out? Do they check out? No. They just get the stuff and they write it up, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, and he gets paid whatever money they promise him." Anyway, so I was able to, after the offensive, the guy says, "I got a guy from Pacification Security Group come up and said, the enemy is over there, but there are a lot of indications of enemy all over the place. Okay, so I'd like targets for my sources." He's running a unit of defectors, Chu Hoi Chans, and others who are going out, in their ex-NVA personnel, recon and others, officers mostly, going out and getting targets. So I said, "I got some for you. This will be a test, because I got these locations from this guy in the Army, and I don't believe him, and this will be a good way to see to validate if they're actual." Well, they were all bogus, every one of them. So we found targets which were airstrikes are called in and destroyed. Got involved with that. Of course, they're still demanding I do this report. It's every month, and that was just. There was the MAC report was an infrastructure report. In other words, how many VC villages are there at what level? How about districts, and where are they located, and what is the strength, and it was just, there was no way to get any information on that, so I just basically submitted what there was the month before. I couldn't say there wasn't or there was. I personally felt there wasn't any. And the first part of things really got exciting. Early July time frame, I believe, 1st of July. Let me backtrack a bit. They relocated when they had up on the border. Remember when the tanks came over? The Vietnamese, they had a battalion up there. They just extricated, they just took off, left the poor Montagnards. The Montagnards came down. They went in the jungle. They can survive. They came down, and the old Cav base camp was still there, so the province chief says, "Let's put them in there." So they lived there. On the 1st of July, approximately, all broke loose for us. They were firing an artillery. They had a 152 millimeter artillery piece in defilade, which kept, which I had to do crate analysis. That's how we found out what caliber it was. We had they had cut the road from the province capital to the district, and before that we had issued these M72 laws, which is
the light on a tank weapon.
Beautiful weapon. Cracker, bad on the ears, but a great weapon. And the enemy attacked the district and to the area to the west. I mean, towards Bin Long. They had a PF platoon and an Army-designed military, U.S. Army-designed defensive position, which was a triangular position with interlocking trenches in places underneath in the ground where you could put ammunition so it didn't get struck. And they defended before against at least a battalion of NVA, and we got airstrikes up the Yin Yang. We had airstrikes when the enemy tried to get the mountain right next to us, where the Vietnamese had a radio intercept organization up there, and this is funny, and this is all part of this attack. We got information from them. The Vietnamese got, and my counterpart gave to me, saying, "Look at these. Here's the communications of NVA tanks. They're talking to each other on their radios." And my boss, I showed my colonel, and he says, "Well, why can't the Americans tell me these things, that there are tanks out there?" Well, so this guy, the colonel's a 06 infantry guy. We put up the chain of command to ask why. "Oh, you don't have the clearance. You don't have the need to know this." Hide. So we had also, before that time, when the offensive started, they put one of these boxes, give us a box. It had a switch on, you turn it on, and that sends out a radio signal, and it's good in case they're going to possibly overrun you, and you can get airplanes. In this case, they brought the Spectre bird that night, and Spectre's a C-131, C-130 with Gatling guns and stuff. Boy, that's awesome. I watched it. Well, the battle continued. The airstrikes on the side of the hill. I got pictures of the airstrikes. The boom on the side, because the NVA were trying to get on top. They never did. Towards the week, they had airstrikes all around that district headquarters, and the road was still cut. But in a week, we start a convoy, armed convoy, to go down and make contact with the district. And so we did that. And I went down in that convoy, and they were still dropping bombs. So I'm while we get so close, I'm standing underneath the awning of one of the structures there, that while the bombs, and there's some tinkling on the roof, because they weren't that close, but there's still chunks of stuff flying. And finally got there, and the ground was just all tore up. I mean, just holes where the airplanes had dropped their bombs all over. And to get there, and Vietnamese are with it, reconnecting with the district chief. And the airfield had mortar rounds in it. They'd fired mortars. And they wanted me to go over there and see if I could determine what caliber they were. They were interested in the caliber. They were 82s. But anyway, I'm on the airfield, and all of a sudden, they fire some more. So I told you this. I went. There was a control tower, sort of a little coop, like an outhouse, because air flights didn't come in every day, maybe every other day, because the Air America landed up on an old 2-lane road right near the province capital. The C-47s and 123s and stuff could land on that 3,000-foot runway, metal. So I went in there, and I'm looking at that, and all of a sudden, several of them. So I dashed back to the trench, which was near that. And it turns out the Vietnamese had been throwing garbage in there, so I fell in a garbage pit. And they had, I don't know if you've heard of jackfruit. It's a big green things that they're all like a guy's got a bad case of whatever. They're round and bumpy. it's sweet to taste, but it stinks to the high heavens when they cut it open. It's just terrible. And fell in that. They towed away vehicles that they captured from the NVA down there, and they were all American made that they were using. Armored M113s.
Mm-hmm.
One had the turret on the top for a flamethrower, and the other one was a standard M113. And they towed it back to the province capital and put it on display for all the citizens of the city to see. I got pictures of that too. And most of the destruction was caused by the Vietnamese shooting the laws, because the laws just ate them out. You know, get in there. One of the vehicles apparently was hauling ammunition, and when that round hit, they exploded it, and it just like someone took a can opener on the sides of that thing and just blew the things away.
Okay. A little bit larger picture. How effective was the South Vietnamese military in your area at actually repelling that offensive?
Well, not in our province, because they flew the coop. I mean, the regular Army of South Vietnam.
Right.
The 9th Infantry, the 5th Infantry Division, Vietnamese, was in Lai Kay. They had responsibility for us, and they fought mostly in Bin Long province, the next province, because that's where the enemy was interested. That's where the enemy tanks went, and the enemy artillery was, and that's where they apparently did very well. But if it wasn't for one of the major things was there still was one what they call Gary Owen Brigade, which was a 1st Cavalry Division helicopter brigade, which was still there. 2, there was Bo Ku Air Power, Marine Air Wing, Air Force Air Wing. There was still a lot of artillery, but the fighting was really because the enemy was driving tanks into the city of Quang Loi An Lac. The city, there's two little towns. Interesting enough, the tankers crew was all chained into their tanks because they couldn't get out, because they're not dumb, because you don't drive tanks in the city, particularly if you know the enemy has anti-tank weapons. And they were ambushed by Vietnamese with laws and such like that.
Were the tanks Soviet-made?
Yeah, Soviet-made tanks. They're T-55s. Yeah.
All right. And then in your area, I mean, did the Montagnards wind up defending the places where you put them, or?
Yeah, well, the ones that were integrated into the regional forces or popular forces. You got RFs and PFs. There are no Montagnards there were, not that I know, in Arvin. Arvin was strictly a Vietnamese affair. But the local defense forces around villages and such like that, the PF, popular forces, they were Montagnards by and large. And they fought well. The regional forces were mixed, but they were directly under control of the sector. The RF companies were not permanently based anywhere. They were like a ready reaction force. They had these, except for that unit down there in that artillery position. But most of them were Vietnamese, command control and troops. But the Montagnards fought. They were not cowards. They just didn't really like the Vietnamese. I saw it. I mean, I saw the way it was just like almost not as bad as perhaps the South in the days of segregation, but the Vietnamese would treat the Montagnard like they would treat a dog, something like that. And that's not uncommon in Asian culture. I know Japanese didn't like Koreans. The Koreans living in Japan were treated like dogs, and treated like Chinese during the Imperial Japan. So if you're not Japanese, you were nothing. If you're not Vietnamese, you were nothing. All this racial bias, and so I'd go. They'd come in. We'd be sitting in a little kiosk like thing having coffee, and the Montagnard come along he's like the dogs. He's just getting scraps practically out. They wouldn't allow him to come in. I mean, it's just, you could see they were taller people too. They were not short like the Vietnamese. They were taller, and they're Malays actually. The racial background's more Malay than Chinese, because the Vietnamese came from, basically migrated from China down the peninsula, and the Malays
They'd come up, yeah.
came up.
In the hills. All right. Now, by the time you get to the end of that particular tour there, sort of September 72, had things pretty well stabilized again?
Oh yeah. It was quiet. The North Vietnamese had pulled back into. They got really blasted.
Mm-hmm. Would you estimate, as far as you can tell, that if the U.S. had maintained the level of support they were providing in 1972, that South Vietnamese would have kind of just gone on for a long time?
Yes. There's one name that comes up to mind to me that just gets me, is Henry Kissinger, who I get sick when I hear him, because we talk about pragmatic people, unprincipled people. Their only belief are themselves and covering themselves. Henry Kissinger, and it's a general feeling among the Vietnamese and most military people that Nixon and Kissinger sold us out. In fact, it was a deal they worked out for us to get out without casualties, and that's basically what it was. And we reneged on the support. In fact, the Congress reneged. And if Nixon hadn't botched up, the business with the what affair they call that thing, I can't.
Oh, well, Watergate.
Watergate, and his political existence was limited, getting more limited, and people just unhappy, and then combined with the war and all that. If he hadn't done all these things, I think we could have got out and maintained our logistical military support, because they learned how to work, and they learned how to fight as we would fight. And whether that was the good tactic in the beginning, you go back to World War II and the OSS and Ho Chi Minh himself, and our decision to give everything back to the French, and that, in which in typical American fashion, the minute the war's over, we just go back, just pull everything back and go home. That's a traditional thing. We don't long-term investment is not.
And in general, a lot of the research, and certainly a lot of the political history of the Vietnam War and so forth, and the picture that you have of Nixon and Kissinger is pretty consistent. I mean, they were focused on getting out with limited cost, and made a lot of promises that they went back on, or that Congress wouldn't keep, or whatever. But you get to September 72, your kind of job there is done.
It's finished.
Year. And then what do you go off and do next?
Okay, to preclude, again, Fort Bragg. I decided that go and take an ITT, intertheater transfer, to Germany, and I was originally assigned to USARA headquarters in Heidelberg, G2 section, but my clearance had basically expired from 1960. When was it? 66. Yep. So I would have to have the update, go through it. But they wanted me to work in the S2, and I'd have to have top secret all this, because I never had it when I was at the CAV or other jobs. So they wouldn't want to wait. They didn't want to wait. Keep me so they just transferred me to to the 3rd Infantry Division. I mean, my orders were just amended, and they sent me to the 3rd Infantry Division in Würzburg. I come there, and I was assigned as the G2 Air, which eventually became known as surveillance officer within the G2. I was assigned the colonel and the person in charge was a Meckel, and he was a major and soon got colonel. I was in the G2 Air was down in the office where the troops were, where it consisted of two lower enlisted and master sergeant and a lieutenant, and worked for me, named Walter Jantz. And we were responsible for, well, air, both again a peacetime year, responsible for working with keeping map library for division headquarters, establishing map policies, establishing policies for use of surveillance, ground surveillance radars within the division area. They wanted me to write a regulation, in which I did, which, by the way, never got published, but that's another question. I'll explain that later. In training was going out to the field and setting up in the area of the G2 in the tactical operations centered on a field training exercise, setting up having a section for my troops to stay, and they setting tents up for the sergeant took care of setting up all the logistical thing, and we're running a desk in the TOC, which it was part of the G2. It was the G2 Air was in there, or the air people there were artillery people, and there was getting aerial surveillance requests, immediates, and planned air requests, and basically just staying out so many days and then coming back. When I got first there, I came over there in November, and the first thing I noticed, I had a month's leave, was cold, and I was cold. And I went to do the standard things, that is to get issued field gear, TA-50 for that area, and so I go down there. The first week I'm there, they don't have anything. Come back next week. Well, before I could go back, they were going to have a field exercise, FTX. So the colonel said to me, you can stay here and man the office and keep, with all immediate messages and stuff that's coming in. And I said, that's fine. By the time, probably to get some field gear for me and we get squared away. So I was doing that first week because I just got in country. Well, halfway through the week, I got a call from one of the further officers in the G2 who says, "Hey, the colonel wants to see you." I says, "Well, we're coming back." I says, "Well, you better get some field gear because there's snow out there, and it's cold, and I couldn't get it. He knows because I told him there's no, I couldn't get issued any TA-50. That's the reason I'm staying behind." Well, he wants, okay, well, we'll take care of you. So they give me the gear, and I go out, and it's an open Jeep, and I'm freezing even though I got all this clothing on. So I get out there, and I'm in staying in the G2 portion of an expandable van, which, by the way, I was on my hand receipt, but which they took over for me, because G2 Air controls if there's any imagery any imagery involved in a wartime scenario, you have a van. So I went out there and I waited, and it was 2 or 3 in the morning, and I asked one of the guys, because Meckel just felt, I'm a new guy, you're not going to talk to me, because he's important. So someone went in there and asked if, am I needed for this? What should I do? Because no provision for me, no tent, no nothing. Oh, you can go back. So all that was an exercise and see how he could responsive I was, to pull my string. So that didn't leave a very good taste in my mouth. And then as I got into the job, again, most of the cases boring, because you only did anything when you were in the field. I had another job, was additional duty was NROS, ERAS, which was part of the two officers are on duty at the same time who are read on to the nuclear program, so that in case the balloon goes up, if it comes down and we have the keys and we're supposed to go to the device and turn it and say, okay, we're going to use this, the nuclear surety. And of course, I had training in that in my career course on nuclear weapons and what's the best type of area to drop a bomb to get the widest destruction, and where not to do it, and what's the security, how they secured, and what the guard forces are, and all that stuff. And I was on that job, and that included when you got there's certain time at day, during the day you're there, but at night you're on the duty roster, so I'm pulling officer the day there with another person who has also been given access and can push the button, so to speak. And I did that. I had, again, things, except for field duty, in CPXs, it was rather boring.
Now you mentioned that you had, at some point, you were supposed to prepare some kind of border plan or whatever. Yeah. And what happened with that?
Well, I was to give I was supposed to take photography of the division area of operation, the FIBA or FLOT, or whatever you want to use this term, FIBA. That's the forward area of the division, running from its right flank to its left flank. And Hamburg, I think, was not Hamburg, but I can't remember the city on the left, in the mountains on the right, mountains on the right, city on the left. And so Jance and I, using my vehicle, for which I was to get per diem, for gas and reimbursement, went up took several days and drove up with camera equipment to the main areas on the forward area from left to right. We went from left to right and took pictures, panoramics, and we climbed mountains. I climbed up the ski slope in Wildflecken, where we had a CAV squadron there who did recon, and it was also a training center for USER, or 7th Corps. No, it was 5th Corps. And we did that, and it was a good job. When I came back, got all the photography, edited the photography, I took the general defense plan, and I took maps, and I plotted on the map the distance of and where the wedges were. That covered this. And what's the point? And where did it cover? Then I equated it to a map. So, and what I did is I put all these wedges on where we took the pictures, and then I took pictures of the maps with the map with these things on, each area along the border, and then I'd show a slideshow showing the picture, first the area and then the picture of it. Did each one like that, so I had what they call general defense plan. And that, oh, hey, great, this is good. Okay, I never got reimbursed. I paid for all of that. No meals, no money. They just, well, what happened was, end of May, or mid-May, early May, I'm sorry, we had a review, people from officer personnel, part of personnel office of the Army, OPO we call it, OPO, came into Würzburg. Würzburg's the division headquarters. And they had all the MI officers from all of the 3rd Division up there. And you had an interview with this major. I don't know if it's, I don't remember who else was involved in this. All I know, I talked with this major. And they review your record, and they said, "Oh, Ron, you went to command. You got command time. You got all it. It's okay." And they talked to everybody, all the MI personnel. Well, again, it was in the springtime, at this same time frame that we finally found out in April. April's a great transition for photography. You have the snows are gone,
right?
But you don't have the winter heat. And the problems with photography, because I've flown the areas too, is that in humidity is terrible on long-range photography. You get a lot of blue haze, and I mean, even though I had good cameras, my own cameras, by the way, that it was hard to get good pictures. Except that time frame was excellent, April. So we go to the first part of May, the 5th or somewhere around there. I got this interview. Then in the end of May, all of a sudden we get a call. Colonel Meckel wants all the MI officers, captains, etc., all the officers in the G2 assemble in his office. And the way the assembling is, here's your letter, here's your letter, here's your letter. Of the, I don't know how many officers there were in the G2 now. I know there were 68 total people. 68, yeah, somewhere around there. Everyone except one officer, captain or below, got Dear John letter from the Army. Jantz got one, and he wanted to stay in because he's a lieutenant. But he got one. Taylor got one. The SSO got one. The G2 ops officer, who was an outstanding officer, infantry, he had been a combat arms guy, fought in Vietnam and all that. Great officer, good section, very efficient. He got it.
Were they just downsizing the Army?
Yeah, that was downsizing. Well, the criteria were this. If you had made captain between the 1st of January 1968 to the 30th of June 1969, was it 69? It could have been, yes. No, yeah, 69, a year and a half. Captains and a couple of majors. You made promotion in that time frame, not regular Army.
Right.
The only officer left in that G2 shop was a Whitley, a C counterintelligence officer. That was 9666. Regular Army and fat. He wasn't passed over. So we're getting 90 days. We have 90 days before my discharge date, which was something like September 16, I think, to get my act together and do what I'm supposed to do. Well, the colonel tells me, I said, I'm going home as soon as ASAP. And we also were given, based on the chief of staff, that all these officers have top priority to get out, the processing out. And so I said, I'm going home. Well, sir, Ron, you ought to stay. We got Reforger coming up. And the irony of this was an issue with me with him, because he was having me order maps for Reforgers for every unit in the division. Every unit, not just the headquarters. He interpreted the policies that we got. Well, what if they don't order any? Well, they're responsible. They're responsible. I just, I knew the S2s in the various brigades, and they laughed at him. And one of the guys that was the S2 eventually became a 3-star general in the Army, one of the rarities. And he said, we're covered. But that instilled, I'm taking care of my own shop like he's supposed to. He's got his own, he's got people, he's got sergeants, he's got a list. But no, so and it was so bad that the people down in Heidelberg, where they kept the map library, knew when there was a Meckel requested, always was top priority, when it really wasn't. So I had a whole storage room in the basement just loaded with maps for Reforger operations or for whatever in our area of operation responsibility that nobody ever used. And I got when we go out to the field, I always take. I had them already maps that we're going to use in our shop. I had everything already in rolls separated, so that all we had to do was pick the stuff up, had all in a container, and then ship it, throw it in the truck, and go. Oh, this is how this is not fair. You're supposed to, and all. And so when I told him I was going home and I wanted right now, he was all bent out of shape. And to effect, I never got paid, the money that I accomplished that mission. Secondly, I had to go back to the Department of the Army and get my last officer for efficiency report from him. And of course, he screwed me. I mean, it didn't make any difference. The Army didn't pay attention to that because I was getting out, and they realized that. But he did me no favors. But, this guy, he's the guy that I drafted a letter of reprimand for another officer in the company commander of the MI detachment. They had only a detachment. Captain Smith, for dereliction of his duty, performing his duty. I wrote that. He had me write.
Don't hit your microphone there. But.
Okay. He had me write this letter of reprimand. This guy was a micromanager in the nth degree. That regulation I was telling you about, I worked on that for 4 months or more, and then never got published by the time I left. I got all the input from every level that was to the brigade, from the brigades, and other people that I had would be using these ground surveillance radars. And I visited these units to see problems and everything before and I took their inputs and incorporated them or didn't incorporate them, depending on it had to be a uniform policy. He says, well, I'd get responses on a piece of napkin, just a piece of scratch paper in pencil, which was hard to read. Oh, we don't think this. And I was then to say, I had to write back to them, well, we're not using this because of this. And I was supposed to be a formal, typewritten signature, etc., rebuttal of what they wanted. And I said, well, okay. And I just took this whole thing and put it in the hold box. You know, it had a in, out, and hold, and I just left it there. He never asked for it, and I'm not going to respond to it. It was, this guy was a pip. For Christmas, he gave a party. He didn't get along with, he felt inferior to his combat arms people, one thing. And he didn't know how to get to be an officer and then communicate with soldiers or subordinates, because he was in charge, and he very insecure, in my mind.
Had he not had, say, a field command in Vietnam?
No,
or anything
never
like
had,
that?
never. Just he had been assigned as intel officer, went to school at CI. I don't know what his background was, but he's never been in combat. Never had a bullet shot at him.
What proportion of the sort of mid-level officers in Germany at that time do you think were like that? Were most of them better than that? Was he kind
most of them missed the captains, and a lot of the captains and were all combat veterans. I mean, even MI officers were, at one time MI officers were, of course they were MI, but they had to go to infantry basic course, officer basic course. They didn't have a basic course. I went through one of the first MI officer basic courses up at Fort Devens, Massachusetts in '64. Before that, you'd be infantry, go to infantry, then you go MI, and the junior officers had tours. But Meckel had been in intelligence, involved in the military mission in Potsdam and all that stuff. So he never got. He's always trying to one up somebody. You know, he would do things. He had a party. I have to tell you that. He threw a big party. I mean, it was a nice one. Glühwein, it's warm wine, which I don't like. All the foods you want. Of all the 68 people, the only ones to show up were, of course, Meckel and his wife, the sergeant major, who could have never passed the Army PT test, never took PT, and the officers, and that's all. The other 60-some people never showed. They had a choice. It wasn't you will attend. It was, and he was just absolutely vivid, and it never dawned on him why. I mean, I followed his career. He ended up at DIA as a 06 colonel, and he was there back in '83 when I went back to work in Fort Meade, civil service. He was there. I never got a chance to run into him. Guy thought he was going to he's going to go to the top, and he never did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now so you basically your official full-time Army career at that point is done at that point.
That point, after when I came back from there in June of '72, I went to Fort Meade, Maryland, where I was assistant installation management office. We had I worked for a major who was a part of this over the club system, officer club system. I was his assistant. Well, the first thing he did, he went down for training in Miami. They had a training course for installation club management for all the officers in NCO club. I took it. My job basically was to collect the take from the night before from the clubs, and then compile it, fill in the forms, and take the money up to the installation management office. And I get a receipt for that, and I go inspect the clubs, look at the clubs, hear problems, do what I can do within the limited capacity, they had a disco dancing in the club. They started that, and I had to make sure there was no check it out on Wednesday night, no rowdiness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they take it all off. By the way, now there's a big deal.
All right. So that's sort of your kind of what they have you do while they're waiting for this.
While waiting for September for me to get out.
Yeah. All right. And then once you did get out, what did you do?
Grad school.
Okay. And what?
Start in January. History. Plan B, so to speak.
Okay. And where did you go for
Michigan
grad school?
State University.
Okay.
It's the Plan A and B.
Mm-hmm.
Plan A is with a thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's designed for you if you're going for PhD.
Right.
I had no intention to go PhD.
So you were in a master's program.
Master's
Okay.
programs. That didn't mean I didn't write a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Holy
You
Moses.
do seminars, you're right. Yeah.
I basically a paper a week.
Mm-hmm.
I was constantly in the process of doing some papers. And then you had to take methods of teaching history or history, historiography.
Right.
And that was a book a week and a paper and a final exam. And, you know, I didn't final type all my I paid a woman who was a typist to do all my final books, and I'd get the cover, beautiful cover, red things and the things on it. With a history now, but the courses were Eastern Europe, basically Russia,
Mm-hmm.
some of the courses, you know, dealing ancient Russian history, Soviet history. One of the courses I took, part of that was the slave trade in Europe and how it developed and all this. English constitutional history was one of my favorite the early developments of the Industrial Revolution in Europe. You know, the wool trade, things like that, and but mainly Russian area. I also had for my language requirement, I took Russian refresher, which was great experience because I hadn't used it since 64 briefly, 64, early 65, but then not as a formal study, but that was a good course, that refresher course, semester of that. And of course the historiography course, but writing papers. No computers either, just
Yep.
I had a IBM Electric this time, and that thing got plenty of use.
And then, now, did you
I got a teacher's certificate too, which was, I thought I wasted my time on that.
Did you have to do student teaching?
Yes, I did that. That was interesting. I did well too, but this was 76. In Fitzgerald High School in Warren. Came in there. Coach was Eldrath. Teacher was Eldrath. 2 history courses, 3 history courses, and a drug course. That was his agenda. He says, "I don't do drugs. You know, I have no background in this." He said, "That's fine." So I took 2 European history, ancient history, of course, and then they allowed me to teach Russian history because there were a lot of Slavic kids in Warren. And so I had those 2 courses and the Russian course. The Russian course was really, it was very good. I contacted my major professor, Dr. Bureaucracy. I says, I need a book, a recommended a history book that I could use as a text that is for students of 11th and 12th grade reading levels. And I even did a close test. They call close tests. I don't know if they use that. That's a test where you count up so many pages of monosyllabic and multisyllabic words, and you come up. You have a magical formula that says that people should be able to read this level if they, and that. And I got a book by an author, Maltsov. That's the only thing I remember. And I recommended to the curriculum committee on the high school, and they, no, Ron, they're just too tough. This is the 70s now, the dumbing down of education. But these kids were all type A people. And the other courses, there were no textbook. They were just brochures, and world history with brochures. Well, again, they didn't, history, this was a change in education going on. Dumb kids. I took a novel approach. I was there through the midterm. So I told them that I'm going to give you a midterm exam, and I'm going to talk to you or lecture you in the classroom, and using these little booklets that we got. And so I did that. I took these kids, they know you're a student teacher. And I watched, these kids were underperforming. I mean, there's no discipline. They're not getting any discipline from home. They had PTA, PTA, they had open house. I'd get lucky, most I got was and that was only with the Russian language course. That was 5 families, very low, and the classroom was full. That they would come. I failed. I took the scores, the test I gave them. In fact, the test I took the questions verbatim out of the literature with the choices of answers, A, B, C, D, whatever. So if they were reading and remembering, they could know. And I still got, the highest grade was something like 72, and the lowest one was down in the 30s. And I just averaged it out and made the average the highest grade. I still only passed a couple. And I counseled them after I gave them out. I called them out in the hallway. Both of those classes, I brought each person out there and told them what grade they were going to get and what's going to get sent home to their parents. Oh, the tears, oh, Mr. Kloet, all this stuff. You failed. And I didn't back off. And I don't know what they got at home. I don't know what happened afterwards, but anyway, the Russian course was good. Because the kids, first they were all type A, they were all going to college, 11th, 12th graders. I really lectured. That's all, because they wouldn't approve my book. So I took the book, and I did this on a weekend, which was really pushing it. I outlined the book. Just went through and outlined. And I fleshed it out. I've got it at home yet in the 3-hole binder. And I put 3 points on the board in the beginning of the day, and I told them that this is all these material, a lot of them is going to be inclusive in the exam, and you'll do a paper for me, and here are the subjects. I give them that too, and I talk, and it was a great experience.
Well, that would have been like an elective class.
Yeah. They wanted. Oh, they were.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
I had a kid there named Christoph. His family, I think they were Greek. This kid was a really conscientious. He wanted to do Russian Orthodoxy. And so he did research. That's another thing. I made a bibliography for him so they could go to the school library and also the district library to get books on these subjects. And because this kid went to Orthodox church, so he'd probably get that information. Well, one day I got a call from the student, from the office, that the mother of this Christoph kid wanted to talk to me about his kid, her kid. And so I called the number and, what's the problem, man? I don't know. What have you done? All he does is work on his stuff, on his paper. He's going crazy. He won't eat. He won't do anything. Yeah. I said, I just said that, told him, here's my requirement. I want a paper from you, you know, organization, logically organized. I'd like them typed if you know how to type, or you can get them typed. That's fine with me. And also want to know the sources, the footnotes. I didn't expect him to use what's the name, Kate Tarabian or whatever that woman's name is. There's a book I have still at my library. I don't expect him to do that, but anyway. Oh, he was just busting his chops on it. Oh, that's great. He learned a lot. Good paper too, by the way. So I did that. I took that, and then I had to take these courses at the Michigan School of Education. Oh, hey, how to arrange a classroom. My faculty advisor, my advisor was a PhD candidate. She never been teaching, just from cradle to the grave, sort of thing. Big, non-ending education. And I said, well, I taught in the Army. I know how to set it. I know how to run a 60 millimeter projector. I know how to put out view graph transparency projectors and arrange a classroom. Oh, okay, you don't have to take that. Yeah, I got credit for that. Then they had this transactional analysis sessions. Every so often you'd go in, or you'd sit around in the circle, and we all had to bare our souls and all. And I was the oldest person in that group. And I had taken some of these, couple of these students had been in the historiography course. Teaching history course, I mean. And this one girl was one of them I remember, was in that history course. And I talked to this professor, and I said, she prefaced everything with the phrase, you know. And I sat right next to her in class, and she was driving me absolutely bonkers on this thing. And she was in that thing. And they would get us sit around, and how they feel about things. So you have a final exit interview with your faculty advisor on when you finished your education course, your certification course. And we got talking. I said, I played a role in that seminar, that sessions, every one we had. Well, how can you do that? This is 1966, 76. I was born in 1936. Do the math. I'm not sitting in the classroom with kids who have never, ever, ever been out and experienced what I have and gone through what I have about my personal life. It's not relevant. Oh, she understood. She decided that it wasn't worth a fight. Because I would have gone up higher on her to the head of the department.
But you get certified, but you don't go off and become a teacher then?
No. Application, I call them, I started folders. I went through the school employment office, and they give me do this on a resume. Well, this isn't even a resume. This is more than a resume. And with a picture, I had a picture taken on beautiful paper, sort of a brownish colored paper, light tan, professionally typed. I sent them out to I got addresses, every school district from the employment office I could find. At the end of the process, I got some interviews, but by and large, I had 2 folders, rejection letters 1 and 2, 2 folders, big, and the common thread was, you have too much experience, we can't hire you. Because under the criteria, I have a master's degree plus, and as a beginning teacher, we can't hire you. So I went even to a private schools and looked, and there was a school down in India, how private, and I could, that job was up. It's a private school, military school. But the guy who was going to get out, was retired, decided not to retire. So that. So after I got out, I tried to substitute teaching. And that I just, they'd call you at the last minute, early in the morning, and and I can't remember maybe one classroom that I went into where there was a lesson plan for that day, which I was supposed to follow, you know, like continuity from the day before when he was there. I'm sitting there as a babysitter.
So what do you wind up doing instead?
Active duty.
All right.
Every tour I could get, the summers. Headquarters 5th Army, I did 6 months. I went to Command and General Staff College in almost a year. I was at the school. I taught. I was an instructor, ops officer, assistant ops officer, deputy commandant, all those years, and I got this duty, got active duty to build on my active duty resume.
So are you doing this through the reserves?
Through the reserves,
okay.
on tours.
All right. So even though your official career was over, you retired out of it, you can come back and...
Oh yeah, I can do that, because the retirement criteria that I'm shooting for is 20 years, active years, and that's what I got.
And so you do it in these X number of months at a time, and you put...
I started out with over 14 years, and then I just added on another 6.
Okay. Of the different assignments that you're doing there, because you're sort of in the reserves kind of from 73 to 92.
Yeah.
All right. What
Intelligence.
Yeah. And what was sort of was there a particular favorite assignment or the best place to work? Or?
Well, the best place was in the school system. The Command General Staff College was really good. That was a good assignment. I mean, a good year. They called it the best year of their life. Bust your chops. I mean, you did bust your chops on subjects which I had not very familiar with, but which I had to do a lot of work to get. But it was a real challenge, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. I worked in the 5th Army headquarters on tours. I was a mobilization.
Where's the 5th Army headquarters?
Fort Sam Houston, Texas. That's where I really got into Tex-Mex food. And but the assignments, the best assignments was when it was in from 67 through 92, when I was at the end of 91, when I was the commander of the intelligence school at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And that was the one where I flew about twice a month down to San Antonio to be command of the school, and we taught students. We sent out teams to various areas to teach reservists MOS qualification training in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Tulsa, wherever the reserve centers were. These military intelligence units, we did that, and that was a very gratifying job. I really enjoyed that, because I put everything I knew into practice.
So we were basically kind of going over your sort of...
From 1983 on, right?
Yeah, 83 on, yeah.
Okay.
You're listed here as United States Army Operational Group, United States Army Foreign Intelligence Activity, so directing a collection management division.
Right. Those two units, which last from 1983 through, from March, I was there from March 1983 through June of 95. The FIA, Foreign Intelligence Activity, came up about 1990, a reorganization, and ops group went away, and FIA, we got larger.
Okay.
And we were swinging, we were moving.
What were you doing?
Okay. I came out there as working in collection management branch. It was a branch at the time. Collection management is in a human unit. Collection management is direction. In other words, you don't go out and collect information unless you have some reason to collect that type of information. And so you get you have collection plans. In other words, you have a plan for you need this, 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 this. How can you collect this, 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 this? What sources do you have? You know, and the marrying sources with requirements. Well, requirements are based on geographic area, subject, you know, technical areas. And we were organized to give basically worldwide coverage to collect human intelligence. Now, that worldwide means not necessarily every country in the nation, but the major topics of the day, which are in the plan. The master plan, which is controlled, basically for all human, is controlled by Central Intelligence Agency, and it farms it out to the other agencies, and we are one of them. The Army started out Army, and then you had the Air Force, Navy, Marines. Well, the Army became the big player on the block, and we became the only strategic human collection unit that used controlled operations. That means not debriefings, not dealing with mostly overt collection type stuff, but using human sources. And we became the premier organization. Navy didn't do any. The Army was the only one doing that. The other service was doing, they had people trained in that, and they came basically, were absorbed, some of them in our organization. But the overt debriefers and that, they stayed separate. Now, we had overt debriefing within the Army. We had several detachments within our group that did overt collection. I mean, debriefing of foreign personnel and also technical missions and stuff. American businessmen or councilmen or government workers or whatever, debriefings. Up in our organization, we did the collection management primarily and reporting on the controlled operation.
So are you doing things like deciding what kind of information to get, or who is going to get it, or how they're going to get it?
No, we are tasked based on capability. Every organization that does it has to submit a capability statement. Agencies, DIA, CIA, or not CIA, no one's, but Army does military stuff. CIA did civilian strategic stuff. What intel agencies or what organizations specifically wanted this type of information, they would put out, they would like this. We would submit a capability statement. And the capability statement says we could do this, this, this. You can, if a priority something happens that is now priority to do this, that this information is needed. This is not short term, this is for long term, projected something like in the Middle East or Russia, it's a long range target, China, any nation that is of critical strategic interest to us, we could develop a source. And then how you do that, just like you find out people who you run into that you hear about or whatever means that have capability to provide a specific piece of information, then you go about the techniques of getting this guy on the string so he can provide and meet the requirements you have. Okay, that's one portion of the job, the technical portion of it. On the other side of that job in the collection management division was to publish the reports that come out of the operations.
You sort through the information and make sense of it and communicate it.
Well, it was written by the people who, the man down in one of our detachment who got it from this guy. But our job was to make it understood and also to see if he did, in fact, answer the questions
Right.
and didn't editorialize while he's doing all kinds of
Right. Okay, now between 83 and 95, there's a fair amount of stuff going on. You have the
Oh.
collapse of the Soviet bloc going on. There's the first Gulf War.
The first Gulf War was intriguing. Before the Gulf War was intriguing. The revolution, the war between Iraq and Iran,
Iran-Iraq War,
the
sure,
revolution in Iran,
that had happened.
Syria.
Well, Iran, I mean, that's the late 70s when that happens.
Or the revolution to what was when did they overthrow Khomeini?
They didn't overthrow Khomeini.
I mean the Shah.
Shah, that was the late 70s.
Late 79, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, up until that time, we reported we continued to.
Yeah. Yeah, there was still
more
sort of
remote.
going on. But then the Iran-Iraq War is going on, and all
That too.
But then, so forth. So you were focusing a lot of your attentions in the Middle East in that
No, we had branches.
Mm-hmm.
You had a Middle East branch, or CENTCOM. We did it by command. CENTCOM, PACOM, SOUTHCOM, EUCOM. Now, SOUTHCOM. What are the Cuba, Colombia, Bolivia,
Nicaragua,
Panama,
yeah.
Nicaragua, where any place that things go. You know, because Hispanic area is much easier to access because there are a lot of Hispanic people. PACOM is China, primarily, Vietnam, and Korea, North Korea, which is a hard nut to crack.
Yeah.
But those they were organized by commands.
All right. Now, was there sort of a flurry of activity at the time of the Gulf War? Does having a war go on change what you do or how you do it?
No. Leading up to it, see, you things, operations develop, information flows. Usually, if it's all the process is done properly, where information flows more and more, where you tell that things are going to happen, and then they happen, and then other things take place afterwards, and you may have to modify, but yet you still continue to march. But as long as there's not U.S. forces involved inside whatever country there is, we're still, the level of activity may not stay as much, but you're still doing it. In fact, more and right with this thing, since we're in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I can't tell volume. I'm not read in on a lot of this stuff anymore, but I can assume that they're trying like hell to find out what's going on with the Taliban and all this stuff in the al-Sada or Sadas, or the Shiite business in Iraq, and what's going on with all those people to see.
Right. Okay. Now
It's interesting, very.
Right. And you're doing this through June '95. Now, is that still as a military person, or are you a civilian?
I'm a
contractor?
civilian employee.
Okay, civilian employee. And then you have between '95 and '96 another.
We were absorbed. I sort of like the amoeba does to its enemies. It just surrounds them and just sucks them up.
So
we were a victim of our own success. This was Clinton. When Clinton, when DIA, which basically may be a higher headquarters, but sometimes an enemy, was able to convince the congressional committees in the White House that consolidation of all the services, collection activities, etc., under one organization in DIA was more efficient, cost effective.
Right.
So we were disbanded or absorbed. Units were deactivated, and we were given jobs. The requirement was our organization called the U.S. Army Foreign Intelligence Activity all the people must be given a slot in this new organization. That was part of the sign-off deal. Well, that organization was called Defense Human Service, which was headed by, technically, by a Army Brigadier General. The first one was General Britnall, who was my commander when I first was in the Cav, and we had a great reunion, and he says, basically, I'm getting out of here. He saw this thing as a dead. He had been Brigadier General, and terminal. His career was he was an attaché down in Brazil, and he saw this as something he didn't want to do, and so he retired. And they brought in another guy, another brigadier, and I can't even remember his name now, but he saw that he still wanted a career, and that he started spending more time in the basement of the White House, where they got as a representative to the White House, you know, and he eventually got a lieutenant general and retired. But his Carrick, I think his name is, but I'm not sure.
But what was your job?
My job was working. I worked in the Eurasian, well, the former republics of the Soviet Union in the Islamic republics.
Okay, so the Central Asia area.
Asia branch. In fact, I communicate every once in a while with my boss, former boss. I was the desk officer for that, and I had the 5 Islamic republics. We had one attaché, and the other one were military representatives, normally students out of the school at Garmisch. There used to be the Russian school. I don't know if this has gone through a name change, but they train people in languages for duty in these Islamic republics. We were part of the Eurasia division, this little section.
Was this a less significant assignment than what you'd been doing before?
It was no assignment to speak of, it was interesting. I got to meet some good people, and I also learned how things were not working well and why they didn't work well. My job was basically to task them and to get information, if I can, on what's going on in their areas, to keep me posted, so that we can have this information. And there were several ways for them to communicate with me. We had secure communications where they could send a message. But the one in Kazakhstan, there was an attaché, Air Force guy, and he used to send in reports, good reports, except he'd just talk to his counterpart every once in a while. I need a report, and the counterpart in the Kazakh Ministry of Defense would give him an information, and then he'd ship it through the channel showing that he was reporting things. You know, it was nothing, you weren't evaluating them, you were just getting them, and they'd get into the system. I'd get involved in support. You know, they were trying to establish, when they sent a military advisor type to Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan, or that, they would come up into here, and we'd talk about what the job and what you know, and he'd get oriented on the area and that stuff, and he has a Russian language or some language background like that. And then he'd go out, and he'd be a source of communication with us. And for all those countries that had a representative, they have to be supported. Well, that was the big problem. I mean, we're talking, they're in the embassy, they're they have to be supported because they're married and they got their wives and the kids living. You know, there are whole kinds of logistical, administrative, but the responsibility for that type of support is down in a part of DIS, which deals with basically logistics and personnel. Well, most logistics section. They're dealing with a whole bunch of people. So this request from, say, in Kyrgyzstan, well, that wasn't a big problem. Tajikistan, they were having a civil war going on. He needs this. Okay, fine. Goes in the box, and comes back on a message to me. Why? What's going on? I haven't received this. And I said, I'll go check, and then I try to stir things up, and then you get, well, you're stepping in my, you know, and this is the bureaucratic struggle, you know.
So you don't stay there too long?
No, I said, I checked into this. First, one of the things I did when I moved up there to find out what can I do to get out of here. And I talked to the civil servant, to the person who does retirements, and she says, well, for you to get a retirement, you can get out at 60, but you know you only got so many years civil service credit. You could get almost a 30 years if you convert some of your active military service to the civil service system, which entailed being charged 6%, paying 6% of the salary, your base pay, that you earned for every year those military service years you had, for which you had DD Form 214s, which was 13 years plus. And of course, those were the days when I was making chicken feed, like in the Air Force, like when I was a lieutenant and I got a captain. The largest I ever made was when I was a major on before I got out. And that 1 year of Command General Staff College, where they had a DD Form 214, that was several $1,000s, you know what I mean? That was a big salary, year salary as a major. Anyway, so I took that money and 6% of each one of those yearly paychecks, and I paid that into the system. That brought me up to 29 years, 11 months and change. And so, with sleeping, falling asleep on a train, going and coming, the giving up 3:30 in the morning to get ready to go down to the train station so I could get the train in the morning.
So where were you commuting from?
Laurel, Maryland. I tried Amtrak, always late, never on time, stinky cars, not well kept up. I ended up driving down to New Carrollton, which is on the beginning of the Orange Line,
right,
and taking it all the way across the District of Columbia to Arlington to Clarendon. And the building where we were housed at Clarendon's, what I call was a big, tall, pinkish colored building right underneath the train, the subway station was underneath there. And so I just didn't have to go all the way on the street. I just walked through the aisleway. And before 911, the desk where you went through with the security guards was right outside the little cafeteria was right there. And I said, I can't. So I put my papers in, and we figured it all up. And I said, when I made the final decision, I said, how much will it cost me if I don't stay exactly 30 years? Because that would entail a couple of weeks in October. She told me $1 a month.
Okay.
I'm out.
Yeah.
And then, Ron, all your experience, I'd had nothing, I was doing anything. So I retired, and I came back here, I had a home that I bought in '68 for my mother. She had died in '92, and I had a house sitter, and I kicked him out basically. Kept one of the dogs. That was a black lab Akita mix. And in 2001, right before, well, actually, in September, end of September, I got a call from my friend Dennis. Dennis worked for me in Vietnam. He's the one that we went into the funny farm to see one of his men, and I got you blamed for his condition. Anyway, he said, "You want a job? I mean, you want to come back to work?" I said, "Yeah, I'm interested." Well, we need to update your clearance, etc., etc. Okay, fine. So they sent me the paper, they sent me the stuff, and they sent it on a disk, and I just filled in the blanks. A program, you know, on a disk. Fill in the blanks, did it all, kept a copy for myself. What I did was I had to sign one copy too. So I signed one copy, Xeroxed a copy on my copier machine, one for my files, send it off almost immediately. As soon as I got everything taken care of, waited, and finally, just before the end of March, I get a telephone call, come to work. So I then had to get a place to live. So I contacted my friend Jim, whose wife was a real estate person. They live now in Missoula, Montana, and I visit them. But anyway, she's in real estate to marry me up. So I went in. She got me a place, a nice one, right there on the border of East Falls Church in Arlington, which is a huge middle town, I think it's called. It's where all the State Department people live. And I had a furnished apartment, one bedroom, air conditioning that was so hot, so cold, and I had to sleep with blankets on. Anyway, because I was right on the vent in the building where the air. You didn't control the machine; you controlled a vent. Anyway, I was there. Convenient, right 2 blocks from the metro station there, and
what work were you doing then?
I was working the counterintelligence. Counterterrorist operations group within the Defense Human Service, and Bob Willis was the active boss. Pierre Joulet, he's now on Facebook. We're on Facebook together, and Bob, I found out, is living in Honolulu now, working for a friend I visited on my who's in charge, Mike Burke, who's I visited when I was in Hawaii this last time. Willis works for him up there in J2X, which is part of SyncPack. Anyway, Bob was technically in charge, though Bob Willis was operationally in charge. Pierre Joulet was the overall boss, but he had back surgery and he was in recuperation, etc., etc., etc. And I knew him back in my days with when the ops group, when he was beginning, one of the first in the program to get inserted in the embassy in Tunis, Tunisia, and met him first there. That's back 80s.
Yep.
And anyway, so I went back, and that was good work. I felt I could teach a lot, and I had a kid working for me, assigned to me. I worked for this commander, this naval commander female, who she didn't like that because she's Navy and she didn't like it. It's sort of out of her element somewhat, and it's DIA, so I know. Worked with this lieutenant, with this civilian who graduated from MIT, previous military, bright, sharp kid. But I read everything on counterterrorism, and basically PACOM was my area of interest, and I did get involved with writing proposals to establish elements for for the Army or for the DIA to work in the various countries where there were, we believe there were, like Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines, and work that area.
So Islamist groups of different kinds.
All those terrorist groups.
Yeah.
And I read all, and also read accomplishments. A lot of things never. It was sort of the first time that the politics, the Bravo Sierra after 9/11 with the political system, and particularly the disloyal opposition to Bush on this whole thing. There were a lot of success stories that nobody ever hears about because people doing their job all throughout the country. I read all those
success stories in terms of being able to stop terrorist activity before it happens, that kind of thing. Yeah.
If the American public knew all that was stopped, they would change their tune. But they can't talk about how it was stopped and what was done because you don't, you'd compromise methods and et cetera, and personnel and get compromised. So, but that was enjoyable. The fact that they did the bureaucracy played around with my extension, that other 6 months I talked to you about, wait till the last minute, and I had an obligation with the Middletown. I was paying almost $2,500 a month for that furnished apartment, and they, I got to tell them I'm either going to extend or not.
Yeah.
And this was out of my contract. I got additional. I actually didn't make any money. All I did is get myself put in a higher tax bracket because the expenses of I was now subject to Northern Virginia income tax. I was subject to the cost of everything else, and the fact that I was $2,500 a month. The only redeeming thing was that the Metro passes, I had the DIA so they wanted you not to drive, so they buy passes. So I get a quarter's worth, 3 months worth of passes. I could ride the Metro. That was nice. So I enjoyed it. I worked the work, but when they fooled around with the extension, I just said, I'm going home. The only downside of this whole thing is the proposals we were to develop with the commander, and I spent a lot of time faxing things, was with the people in Langley, Virginia. And those people regardless of what they believe is the problem, they got to be the center of all the universe, the alpha, the omega. And they fight you tooth and nail. I don't know how many times I redid that thing, and they come back, fax it back. Well, we want paragraph this, change, and then you do it, and then they find something else they don't like, and it just gets kicked out back and forth and back and forth. And I don't know when they ever. I was there 6 months working on those things. For the last 3 months, maybe really hard. I mean, doing a lot of them, and they're going to have final meeting with the chicken bone in the throat, the guy who's responsible for the delays. And I said, I bet you I know what kind of guy he is, because I was, I worked for CIA for 2 years after high school, after college, my first time. I bet you I can tell you what that guy is. And they had the meeting in our we had a little meeting office there in the CTOG, and sure enough, he comes in. I said, that's the guy. There was a bunch of people coming in that day. I bet you. I said, that's the guy. And this guy walk with duck foot, and he looked like he had threadbare pants on, and he just had that look about him like this guy is a bureaucrat. And I find out that he's the guy that's stonewalling everything, and that's the only real negative thing in that whole tour.
All right. One kind of final question here, because we've got to work your way through.
Yeah.
After 9/11, and you had the 9/11 hearings and a lot of the questions, one of the things that happened was they decided that at least publicly, that the various intelligence agencies weren't doing a good enough job of working with each other, and then they went and created Homeland Security and all of this kind of thing. Do you think any of the effort to improve collaboration or cooperation got anywhere?
Well, let's put it this way. one of the positive things of 9/11, the CTOG thing, was the establishment of joint counter-terrorist JTTFs. I think they're called JTTFs. Yeah, Joint Task Force Counter-Terror, whatever. There was a lot of cooperation at the boots level. The problem was never working at the brown boot level. It was the bureaucrats with vested interest in preserving their authority. And they worked together. It was agency versus agency, not soldier versus soldier,
right,
or FBI guy versus, because I can remember one incident where they needed some photos of something, and the FBI had it. This is something with Guantanamo, and I don't know the exact nature of what. Well, the CIA guy.
We were basically then talking about sort of the
consolidation,
intelligence organization and consolidation and so forth. So, what were you saying then was a part of it that was not working, or?
Well, I think the NIO, National Intelligence Organization, headed by, I think, General Clapper now, former General Clapper, whatever his name is. How can somebody control a mammoth organization without controlling the budget? He has no control of the budget. He writes reports. He can recommend, but CIA still claims to be the agency, which should, in talk recently I've been reading, they should get back to their OSS roots, and forget about trying to be the agency.
Right.
Which I can remember. NIEs. You've heard of NIEs, National Intelligence Estimates?
Yes.
Who honchoed those? Who controlled the publication and the delegation of responsibility for information, etc.?
That's been the CIA, hasn't it?
Of course. And you go down there, and it's just like, oh, hey, John, and they go in there, and it's all already pro forma that you're going to do what CIA wants you to do. First, how can you have any there's the term in intelligence we call multiplicity of sources. How can you have multiplicity in practice when you're reading off the same sheet of music? When they're controlling everything, they fought tooth and nail ever since the creation of the military having its own strategic collection outfit, particularly controlled operations from the beginning, as far as I can see, because they wanted to control it, because they are the agency. Now, I work for the agency. And I learned that you can't have one group controlling everything. And I think NIO, they made, well, there was I think NIO is what do they do? That's what I've been able, how do they play in all this? Nobody says. They are now coordinated. Well, does NIO control the budgets of anybody? I doubt it. Then TSA, Transportation Security Agency. Bush was trying to put across this as being practical. We want to get this up and going. Let's hire contract first, till we can vet people to become permanent employees. No. We got to take them out of the current strength. Well, so they create the structure to expand to cover all the airports. Well, they had to have people, so they just people in my business were bailing out of the business because they couldn't get promoted. So they offered a 13, and I know this one guy was a 12 and no chance of ever getting any higher, or 13, I think he was a 12. Next thing I know, up recently he was a 15.
These are ranks within civil service?
Civil service. They raped agencies to fill out TSA, and you've been through the
and you're still taking off your shoes.
I'm taking off my shoes. Did I tell you when I went to Hawaii that the first time I got scanned completely, I went to was in going to Kauai at the Honolulu airport, and I take my shoes off, my ring, my watch, my belt, everything, and hold your hands like this, and okay, hold my hands like this, and I walk through, and you have to stand there for a couple of seconds or so. And they said, okay, you're done. And I said to the woman who was on the other side, I says, can I get a picture of this, please? And then she for a minute, and then all of a sudden she broke out. She had a big smile. I was pulling her leg on this. Who cares? That's my, but the fact that the government has just continued to expand the bureaucracy, and I can't, where is it panning out? Where are we accomplishing, making great strides? It's bigger.
Well, there are no more shoe bombers.
Yeah, well, the local level works. I mean, the people at the local level get along. Lateral liaison.
Yeah.
It's people who are up in this bureaucracy. The number of super grades. There were studies out in the I saw it in the Washington or the Wall Street Journal, that the percentage of super grades in that, how the bureaucracy is just, and it doesn't seem to me to be working any better.
Not necessarily. All right. Now, I think just to close out here, I mean, as we were changing tapes and so forth, you look back at the whole career that you kind of had in the service. Was that a good life?
Well, is it the one I really wanted to do, or the one I adapted to do and found out it was satisfying? Very few people, I don't know what your first desire was to be. All I knew was that I liked, before I went into service, I liked it because my brain was filled with things from my uncles and that who served in the Army in the Second World War. A goal was to be an officer eventually. I wasn't sure about a career, but I liked the work that they put me into. My first job in the Air Force was intelligence, signals intelligence. I liked that, Soviet Union, Soviet area. That was very interesting. That pushed me to go to Michigan State and major in Russian language and literature. My mother wanted me to be a CPA. I didn't want to be CPA. The military career, the college, I figured after that I'd go, of course, having a degree in Russian language literature and minor in German and history is not necessarily going to get you a job, and definitely not in civilian life. So I looked at agencies. I went to work with CIA, and I told you that story. And because the next day, NSA, or 2 days or whatever called, I wish I'd taken the NSA. It had been different. But that happened. Things happen. You can't control everything. I never said that. The only thing I really wanted was a career in the Army or military, not necessarily a career in any one specific field. The things I enjoyed were intelligence work, but I enjoyed the fact of being busy too. Being a headquarters company commander was a busy job, and certain things that were enjoyable. And working in troop duty in Germany was enjoyable. Vietnam, I mean, all of it, being involved with something that could be gratifying was enjoyable. I mean, it felt like I was fulfilling what my capabilities were, and that was the main goal. I wasn't going to be a rock star or Bill Gates or anything like that. I wasn't that dedicated.
So you'd do it again?
I'd do it again, yeah.
Very good.
I'd make a couple of different decisions. I'd keep my mouth shut a little bit because I irritated a few people. And you know, it all rolls downhill, and you'll pay for what you say. Anyway, that's...
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and give us 3 sessions and tell your story.